Hello and welcome back to the channel for another build video. I am prepping to route the truss rod slot on this neck blank here. If you are interested in skipping ahead to the end to see the final product, I am not going to stop you. This guitar is currently available for sale at Bullfrog Music in Corvallis, Oregon. I typically sell my stuff online direct to buyers, but I've also wanted to have a place for people to go and try them out, so that way it's more than just some dude on the internet making guitars. You can actually get your hands on them, feel them, hear them. So if you stop by Bullfrog Music, check this guitar out, and if you pick it up, let me know what you think. Constructive criticism is always great, and I always like hearing how people are inspired by my instruments and what they remind them of, because I always get different answers. Next step here is to mock the blank up in my jig here for the bandsaw and cut the front face off of the headstock, setting my relief angle for the strings as they leave the nut. I cut this at a 7-degree angle, so about half of what a Les Paul break angle is on a headstock. It just makes for a stronger joint around the headstock, which is the weakest area on the instrument, but it also reduces the amount of potential binding because there's less downward force in the nut slot for each string. This guitar is getting a tremolo bridge, so that's extra important. And as you can see, that piece that I cut off the front face is getting flipped to the back. I hide my scarf joint when I have to do one at the very tip of the headstock, so that way there's as much meat for the tuners and everything, and it keeps that glue joint out of the actual neck. A lot of scarf joints are between the nut and the 3rd fret, somewhere in that area, and it just creates a potential weak spot. I prefer to not use a scarf joint at all, but I'm also very grateful for the materials I get to work with and want to respect them, so I use as much of the wood stock as I can with each piece. Now that the clamps are off, it's time to clean up the glue edges on the router. As this glues up, it tends to slide around a little bit, and so this just helps true up both surfaces between the two pieces. Skipping ahead a little bit here, my fretboard I glued on here. In that last little clip, I was trimming up the fretboard edges as well. Here I am drilling my dots for the inlays. Gluing on the faceplate so that way the headstock matches the body of this guitar. I made this body a while back alongside another build that I did. Anytime I set up a process like this, I tend to chop out a couple of them at the same time, just because it saves me on time later. Often setup is what takes the longest amount of time, not actually cutting the piece, doing the work. So this body was made and actually stained and finished partially before I moved to San Antonio, and it's been sitting in storage, so it's about time I got her done. Marking out my tuner hole location. Originally this headstock, when I drew it, was a 4x2, and after I made a couple of those, I flipped it to 2x4, and the playability, string tension on the high E, B, and G strings that you prefer to bend the most is a whole lot better, and so it's stuck ever since. When making a bolt-on style guitar like this, it's really important that it has a tight neck joint. But what I have learned is there is such a thing as too tight, because you have to account for the tolerance of the finish once you lacquer this thing and then reassemble it later. Here's a couple images of the previous gypsy I made several years ago. Had the same top and same sepele body as this one. Thankfully, when I had mixed up this watermelon pink stain, I had plenty of extra, so I had enough to match the headstock with the exact same stain that I used on the body several years ago. I didn't have to try to make a new mix that matched. I've learned over the years to stain and then do a couple flash coats of lacquer on whether it's a headstock or a top before I do any binding, because often the process of gluing the binding onto that little routed channel I just did can discolor the wood and change how it accepts stain around the edges. So always stain first. I had a bunch of kind of random chunks of broken wood veneer purfling lying around. And so I decided to make my own inlay dots out of it. So I cut off a chunk of the section that I wanted with a specific color pattern and quickly glued it to the end of this dowel so I can then trim it down, sand it to a circle here on the sander, or at least close to shape. And then on my drill with a finer sandpaper, I'll chuck up the dowel into the drill, spin that on some sandpaper, and that will get it pretty uniform. I've done lots of different styles of dot inlays, but this is my first time doing this variety of them, and I really like how they turned out. I think they are unique, simple, but also not over the top as far as aesthetics. Sometimes inlay can be a little too gaudy, so I tend to opt for something a little bit simpler, but still something other than just a boring old white dot's kind of nice. After the world's quickest neck carve, we will move on to side dots. What I've been doing for quite some time now is an outer ring of aluminum or brass, something that is nice and reflective so it's easy to see in low light situations like on a stage, and then I'll inlay a contrasting color into the center. Now this part is the scariest part of the whole build for me, and also one that I enjoy the most. I've done a number of decals and different ways of putting my name on my instruments in the past, but what's better than buying a handmade instrument and having it personally signed by the guy that made it? And each one's a little different that way. By this time, I had been lacquering quite a bit, and while lacquer's drying, hit the beach. Okay, good morning. I've not been out here for a couple of weeks, partly because I've been busy, but also lacquer needed time to cure. As you can kind of tell, the finish is pretty dull at the moment, so I came in here recently and sanded everything nice and smooth to get out any high spots, or at least 90% of them. Basically all I'm in here to do today is to keep spraying. I like to get it to this point, knock it down nice and level, and then do 1 to 3 just light like flash coats to kind of build that gloss back up and have one nice even layer to polish. So that's where I'm at. It's always a good feeling peeling the tape off, because it's almost like the light at the end of the tunnel. The lacquering process is difficult and it's a very finicky finish, so it feels really good to be able to peel the tape off and know that you're done spraying. But then tons and tons of wet sanding and polishing is to follow, so it's kind of a fleeting moment. While giving lacquer time to cure before sanding and polishing, it's time to move on to actually winding the pickups. This set of pickups I based off of my uncle's 54 Les Paul. It is, or was rather, a gold top originally in life, but it's since been refinished. And because of that, I refer to these P90 pickups as the 54 refin P90 set. You can buy pickups from me individually or as a set. So if that is of interest, please reach out. I'd love to make a set for your guitar. The goal with this set was to get as close to that 54 Les Paul as possible. And once this guitar was done, I went over to my uncle's house and we did an A/B test through his vintage Princeton reverb. I got very, very close to the same sound. The Les Paul in the bridge position, very slightly brighter. Part of that is due to a shorter scale length, a wraparound tailpiece versus a tremolo tailpiece. The woods were very similar, the weights were very similar, all of that stuff was pretty close to the same. And especially in a recording, I feel like anybody would have a really hard time telling the difference between the two guitars. It was a fun day, and I was really proud of myself for getting that close to that sound. This machine is one of my oldest son's favorite in the shop, and as I was in the middle of winding this set, as you'll see here in a second, he woke up from his afternoon nap and decided to come help. Oh, you're getting big, kiddo. Okay, let me help you. Sure, put 2 hands on there. Start slow. It's going to go really fast. So we're going to gently back and forth.
What's that?
It's called a wire tensioner.
What's thing?
Yeah.
Make it fast.
Yeah, it's really fast. Plastic bobbins are prone to warping a little bit while they are being potted in the wax, just because of the temperature. So a quick little hack is 2 pieces of wood, clamp it on either side with a screw running through one of the pole pieces of the bobbin. Good to go. Everything is nice and level and crowned and polished, and yeah, this is going to be a really nice. At this point in the build, my pickups are done. Fretwork is done, level, polished, crowned, all that good stuff.
Nice and reflective,
really
easy
nice.
to see.
and I'm starting to put parts on. I really like these hip shot locking tuners. I've used a couple different things over the years, but these have always been consistent.
I just have to wet sand and polish the body and the pick guard. Pickups are made. I might be playing this tomorrow.
Moving on to the fretboard, this is Macassar ebony. It is a true ebony, but looks, feels, sound is very much in between like a true rosewood and a quote-unquote true ebony. It's one of my favorite woods to use, and after a quick oil, we're ready to go. I've been wet sanding with 800, and I have most of it leveled. There's a few little shiny spots in there. Nothing major, that'll all come out. I've been hitting the sides a little bit, but they sprayed really nicely, so I've only had to touch a couple of spots. I'm about to flip it over, do the top, and yeah, should be done with this thing today as far as assembly. Fingers crossed. After a dinner break, some time with the family, I'm back to continue more wet sanding and polishing. Pickguard, thankfully, the lacquer went on really nice on this, so it shouldn't take me that long. It's also not a big surface, it's flat, but my right arm feels like it's about to fall off from all the wet sanding, so I'm hoping that it will go quickly. Guess we'll find out. Okay. So today I think is going to be the last day of this build. As you just saw, I finished last night sanding, polishing, everything. So now got some parts populated in my pick guard, and we are going to get this thing put together. First order of business is I need to clean off last night's mess.
Decided to make the back spring cavity fancy.
Guys, I just made a pretty bad mistake, and I'm not happy about it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm in the process of setting the bridge, and I use this tool here to pull the springs back. In the back side, I use this thick piece of rubber to protect the top. And while I was pulling on the first one, you can see it left a nice scratch with a gouge. Thankfully it's not super deep. This part will all wet sand out. My back plate cover will cover some of it too, so if it's not perfect right there on the edge, you're not going to see it. This gouge I'm going to have to fill with some super glue and sand and then repolish the area. Yeah. The joys of making difficult things. Here at the end, I'm very happy with how this one turned out. I really like the color. It's not a super bright pink, so at times it kind of looks like a muted red. Sometimes it's more pink. The quilted maple figuring kind of plays tricks with your eyes as far as what color it is at times, and I really enjoy that. Plays and sounds great, as we'll hear here in a second. you for watching, and have a great day. I'll catch you in the next video. Please like and subscribe.